Welcome to the Switchblade Sisters Social Club, a true crime podcast where two sisters exploit their worst fears for your entertainment. You're welcome. I'm Dee.
And I'm Rhonda, and together we are the Savile Sisters. For more information, check out our website at www.switchbladesistersocialclub.com or find us on Instagram and Facebook at Switchblade Sisters Social Club.
Thanks for listening.
This is our podcast, Switchblade Sisters Social Club, true crime podcast where two sisters exploit their worst fears for your entertainment. My name's Dee, this is my sister Rhonda, and we are together the Savile Sisters.
Yay!
Hi parents, you did this. We have got all our socials and everything on our website, switchbladesistersocialclub.com. So we also are doing a giveaway at the moment. So if you write a review, if you follow us, if you send us a screenshot of it, and if you join our mailing list, which you can do on our website, then we will enter you into a prize draw for a bunch of free giveaway. You get our some of our merch.
Mm-hmm.
Get you one of these mugs and a few other goodies, like this sticker.
Mm-hmm.
And we will also throw in some stuff from our own independent businesses. For example, you get the lunar planner. I should really show the lunar planner. I'll get it.
Oh, the lunar planner is how I organize my life.
I'm gonna get it. Give me 1 second while you tell them about your mugs and stuff, or your.
Oh yeah, we're gonna include some notebooks. We're gonna include some pocket mirrors, pens. We got all sorts of merch that we can throw in.
Look at this lunar planner. It's a beast.
Oh, I love it. For the last few years, your lunar planners have kept me organized.
So there's loads of gumph at the beginning, like analyzing your birth chart or whatever, but it tells you whenever your full moon, new moon is. You've got a page per day for writing all your notes and everything. Yeah, I basically made the planner that I wanted and then started selling it. That's what you do. You find a niche and you exploit it. So you can work with us. We are, between us, writers, social media managers, podcast editors, all kinds of stuff. So you find that information, copywriters, you'll find that gumph on our website as well.
Let us help you.
Yes. Rising
Help
tide
you.
raises all ships.
We believe in collaboration over competition. So even if you are also a true crime podcaster, we would love to help you. If you need help with your show notes, if you need help with your socials, if you need, I say it every episode about Dee because she doesn't. Dee is a journalist, who writes for the Pod Bible. So Pod Bible magazine.
My sister, fucking awesome social media manager. If you like my socials, it's her. Because I struggle with it. I have a proper mental block on social media, which I know happens to a lot of people because it just feels overwhelming at times. So it was one of the first things that I was like, please do it for me. I'll pay you.
I love it so hard. I love it so hard.
Yeah. And I hate it in equal amounts. So I'm so excited about this topic because if you listen to the last episode, you will know that we had a debate when talking about this topic because I always wanted to cover it and my sister was so unenthusiastic and I convinced myself it's because she doesn't know enough about this case.
It was because I didn't know. To be honest, I didn't know anything about it.
So she ended the last episode saying she struggles to understand how Maria from West Side Story could even have any kind of scandal around her when there's so fucking much scandal.
Okay. You know what?
Not just in the way she died, but in the entirety of her life.
Whoa. Wow. Okay, because you know what? I love West Side Story. I'm not like a musical enthusiast, even though I was a music teacher. Like musicals aren't actually my thing, but West Side Story I fucking love. I love the story. We grew up with it. We'd watch it on repeat.
Because I've literally got this in my notes. Our dad loves it. I haven't seen the remake, but our dad loves the original, and he used to make us watch it. Yeah, we probably didn't appreciate it in full when he used to force us to watch it.
It was part of our enculturation process.
Yeah, and do you remember? People younger than us won't be able to understand this, but do you remember you had your VCR player?
Yeah.
And you had your set VHS tapes,
Mm-hmm.
and those films you watched on repeat.
Oh yeah, yeah.
So we had West Side Story, My Fair Lady, Terminator 2, Police Academy 4, Citizens on
I
Patrol.
used to love Police Academy. Oh my god, yeah.
Yeah, but specifically number 4. So you had your handful of VHS, and you used to watch them. There wasn't any Netflix, there wasn't any streaming, there wasn't any catch up, TiVo, none of that stuff.
It's like when your favorite song came on the boombox,
the radio. Yeah.
It was so exciting because you're like, wow, you couldn't just have access to songs whatever you wanted
unless you went out and you bought it.
Yeah.
And that's why it was such a treat to go to like Blockbusters and be able to pick almost any film. Wow. So you had, and West Side Story was definitely in our film repertoire. Yeah, and the fact that you didn't think this would make a good episode,
and you either loved
me.
Oh yeah, no, I'm really excited because I remember with West Side Story, you either loved the Sharks or the Jets.
Yeah, I was going to ask you, which one were you?
Sharks, 100%. I mean, it's
all
not even a question. Not even
all
a question.
The way.
The Puerto Ricans, 100%.
Yeah, because we are immigrants ourselves, I feel like we resonated.
Oh,
it resonated hard.
Unquestionable.
Yeah.
That being said, the Jets were also immigrants because they were, a lot of them, from Polish backgrounds.
Yeah, but
and Tony and Maria, one of the best love stories there was, huh?
Oh, heartbreaking. So obviously,
oh my god, when he died, oh god, when he got killed.
That's not a spoiler because this film came out like 100 years ago. But if you haven't seen it, fucking go watch it. What's wrong with you? I remember I even had a birthday party once, which was basically a screening of West Side Story. But I am just going to tell you. I'm going to just tell you everything, okay?
Okay.
First of all, do you know how she died?
Is it something to do with a boat, or am I thinking Kirsty MacColl?
Yes. So this is the other thing. I often got confused. I thought for ages that Natalie Wood got hit by a boat while she was swimming. And then I realized, no, I'm thinking of Kirsty MacColl, who we met one time, didn't we?
Yeah, oh my God. I've got a picture of me sitting on Kirsty MacColl's lap in 1991 or something. She came to our house. And interestingly, Julie Christie's sitting right next to us.
Yeah.
And I'll tell you what's even more horrendous about that story. You know who else was at that party?
Yes.
Jimmy Savile. And this party was at our house in like 1991. I think I was 6. And it was a party for socialist celebrities, wasn't it?
Yeah.
It was. That's what it was for.
As well.
Who was that?
I think Vanessa Redgrave was there as well. She's family friend.
Vanessa's everywhere where we are.
Yeah, but I mean,
or wherever she is.
For those of you who don't know, we are Palestinian. Our dad is Palestinian. Our mom is Flemish Belgian. And so we have had a very strange background where we've moved around a lot, hence our very weird accents and our accents that are different to one another.
I don't know that they are.
I don't know. I think people bunch our accent in the American
Do you know what
category.
though? Because like when I hear recordings of us, sometimes I find it hard to know who's who, actually.
Oh no, yeah, that's true. That's true. And sometimes pictures as well. We definitely have totally different accents to our own parents. Our parents have different accents to each other.
Yeah.
If you come from a sort of multicultural background, you get that. But yeah, so we have
that's why we had this concentration of big names in one place in our home.
Yeah, because they wanted to learn more about the situation in Palestine and Israel. I'll tell you though, famous, I'm going to name drop now, our most prized famous meeting has got to be Marlon Brando.
I mean, there's also Yasser Arafat, but yeah.
I just, do you know what? I regret that.
Marlon Brando was good though. I mean,
I regret that I didn't appreciate it as much because we were only like
fun. He was fun.
He was so fun. But
you were like magic tricks with us.
He did, but you were 7, I was 9. So we hadn't seen obviously the majority of his films or possibly any of his films at the time. But
and the reason we met him was because he wanted to start some sort of agricultural project in Palestine. That's what it was.
Yeah, a sustainable I think it was like rapeseed oil or something. Yeah, interesting guy. Anyway, so we've established Kirsty MacColl got hit by a boat while she was swimming. Very, very sad story. Natalie Wood also died in a boating incident, and I'm going to tell you all about it. But first of all, I have to ask, what's your favorite song in West Side Story?
Oh, it's easy to say America.
Yeah, but
you know what I like? Well, you know what I like about
Krupski?
Tonight? Officer Krupke. Oh, that one's fun. You know what? When I was a teacher and I taught A-level music, West Side Story was on actually the GCSE and A-level syllabus. So I've taught a lot of those songs. And I actually like Tonight because the quintet version.
How is that
for that reason? That there's 5 different parts singing simultaneously. Yeah. No, I like it.
Yeah, great songs. Great songs. All right, so some of my sources, the main source.
Oh, and I like Mambo. Remember when they're in the Jam of the Dance? That's good. That was a good one.
Yeah, that was a good one. That was a good one.
I would sing them, but we're not allowed.
We can't afford it. So one of the books I read was Natasha, the Biography of Natalie Wood by Susan Finstad. She interviewed over 400 people during 4 years of research. So that was a mammoth task that she undertook. And also Little Sister, My Investigation into the Mysterious Death of Natalie Wood by Lana Wood, her sister. So obviously that book touched me here. This book was released in 2021, so I'm giving you up to date intel here and summary. There was a quote at the beginning of the book that got me because of you.
Oh God, I remember when you read the book. You always Dee always gets emotional, and then I always get uncomfortable.
Yeah, but listen to this.
Don't keep it inside.
No, you'll like this one. You'll like this one.
Okay, good. Dee gets. I remember when you read this, and you said, "Oh, if I disappeared or died, you would spend your life trying to work it out too." I know you would. You would. I know you would. Okay, tell me.
Okay, so a little quote at the beginning of the book, attributed to an unknown author. I smile because you are my sister. I laugh because there's nothing you can do about it.
That's funny. That's good. That's good. Yeah, so I would totally, if you were murdered, allegedly, write a book and keep it in the press and do whatever. Don't just be writing a book. Go fucking find them.
I will. But no surprise, because women are not treated kindly in the press. And there's some pretty high profile people involved in this case, but Lana Wood got a lot of stick from her family and from the press, seen as like a cuckoo aunt, or the one trying to get, had like a failing acting career and therefore is trying to get publicity. But like, if my sister died mysteriously, if you died mysteriously, I would fucking do anything. And I would not care what people thought about me for doing it. I just would not give a shit, you know?
Yeah, you would.
Yeah. So I also read a bunch of articles. I'm going to include them all in the show notes. There's too many to list here in an interesting way. So surprise, surprise, the sad parts of Natalie's life expanded further than just the circumstances of her death. We should put trigger warnings on all our episodes. I mean, I feel like if you're listening to true crime episodes, you know there's going to be really, really uncomfortable
and you
topics.
Probably don't have a sensitive disposition.
Or maybe you do and you're torturing yourself. But in any case, this one includes rape, child abuse, domestic abuse, potential murder, drowning. Like, it's awful.
Okay.
So as mentioned, one of her biggest roles was Maria in West Side Story. But she was one of the few Hollywood stars that actually managed to transition from child actress to serious entertainer.
Okay.
Her parents were Russian immigrants, Maria Zudilova and Nicholas Zakharenko. They lived in San Francisco in California. Maria was born in Barnaul in southern Siberia in 1908. Her grandfather owned soap and candle factories. So I get from that they weren't like poor.
Siberia, wow, huh?
Yeah,
I thought that's where criminals got sent.
They left Russia at the start of the Russian Civil War in 1917, which again tells me that they might have been sort of more leaning towards the middle upper class, because that was obviously the communist revolution. Yeah. And they took refuge in Harbin, China.
Okay.
In 1925, Maria Zadlova married Alexander Tatilov, which is another great name. There's fucking great Russian names in this. He was an American mechanic. They had a daughter in 1928 called Olga. And in 1930, they moved to America. But only a few years later, in 1936, they got divorced. Nicholas, aka Nikolai Zakharenko, was born in Uzuriysk, which I had to look on the map, but it's also all the way over by Mongolia, so Siberia. His dad worked in a chocolate factory. He was killed, the dad was killed in a street fight between the Red Army, the communists, and the White Russians, the non-communists. His widow and 3 sons, including Natalie's dad, Nicholas, fled to China. And at this point, I was like, it's weird that they're going as refugees to China, but I guess it makes sense because Siberia is next to China. Soon, Nikolai's family moved to Vancouver in 1928 and eventually to America in 1933. So Natalie's dad is now in the States, and Natalie's mom has been in the States a while and has recently got divorced. Nikolai and Maria first met when she was still married to her first husband. As mentioned, they were divorced in 1936. And in 1938, Natalie's parents married 5 months before she was born. So I think we can do the math there. Natalie was born actually Natasha Zakarenko, which is a super fun name to say, on the 20th of July, 1938. She then had a full sister, because you remember she got a half sister from her mom's previous marriage, Olga. She then got a little sister. Don't go after everything I say.
I'm listening.
Because then I have to edit it out.
Oh, okay.
You can do it sometimes, but not after every half sentence, okay? So Natalie has one full younger sister called Svetlana, and their family surname at the time was Gurdin, because the family changed it at some point, and I'm like, to Gurdin?
Yeah.
Not very Americanized. Yeah. Anyways, so Svetlana also
was this in an effort to Americanize their name?
I guess, but from Zakarenko.
Yeah.
Anyways, so the younger sister also became an actress known as Lana Wood, whose book is the one I read. She was actually a Bond girl called Plenty O'Toole in Diamonds Are Forever.
Oh.
Yeah. They lived in Santa Rosa, California, which is in the Bay Area, San Francisco area. And while they were living there, Natalie was noticed as a child by a crew filming downtown. I say Natalie was noticed. The mom basically had aspirations for her and like forced her on the director. When she started acting, she was made to change her name to Wood. I guess they didn't like Gurdon.
Yeah, it doesn't have a ring to it.
No. The name Wood was chosen as a reference to the director Sam Wood of Gone with the Wind fame by the studio executives. And I wish I could tell you this was the last horrible thing studio executives made her do.
Oh, God. Okay.
Her first role, albeit uncredited, was a 15-second scene in Happyland in 1943. The director, Irving Pitchell, remained in contact with the Wood family to act as a mentor. And I remember reading, he actually was trying to like dissuade Natalie's mom from pushing Natalie into being an actress, because child actors, and they don't have it.
It never ends well. It never ends well.
It really doesn't. Not if they stay in the industry, or even if they don't, to be honest. Anyways, he invited Natalie to screen test, and apparently the mother Maria became so excited, she moved the whole family to LA. So for this, I think Natalie is like 7 at the time. They moved to LA for her career. Lana and Natalie's mother is super problematic. I mean, so in Lana's
a Brittany Murphy mother kind of way.
Yeah.
Same story, huh? Moved to LA.
Yeah.
To make their kids be child actors.
In Lana's book, she describes her mom as what I'll call politely eccentric.
Okay.
No, what I'll politely call eccentric. Natalie was very close to her dad, who died a year before her. And Lana says that if he hadn't already been dead, her death would have finished him off. So they moved to LA. And the pressure for Natalie to become a movie star was against the wishes of Natalie's father. But it seemed that Maria was the one who was overpowering and ambitious. Natalie successfully screen tested and got the role in Tomorrow is Forever in 1946 with Orson Welles.
Okay,
So
wow.
Starts off strong. She was only 7, and Orson Welles described her as so good, she was terrifying.
Wow. I would love a compliment like that, huh? That's as good as it gets.
I know. In any field, I would love that compliment. And from Orson Welles, amazing. I mean, it just made me think, what were we doing at this age at 7? We were doing like horse riding lessons and like playing in the park and riding our bike, you know?
Yeah.
It's like very different upbringings. It was reported on set that there was one time where Natalie couldn't cry on cue. So her mother caught a butterfly and tore it up in front of her.
God. Oh my God. Who would do that to their kids, you know? Just get some fucking onions if you have to, you know? There's easier, nicer ways.
Drops. I mean, it still feels cruel, but it's better than this. And then, like, the next time Natalie couldn't cry on cue, the mum just reminded her of the time that she destroyed this butterfly in front of her.
Jesus.
There was another incident where Natalie hurt her wrist, and it turns out she had broken her wrist on the set of a movie. And her mum, this will be a theme throughout their childhood and lives, the mum basically told her to suck it up and carry on. The result was that her wrist never healed properly, and she had like a bump on her wrist, presumably where the bone didn't heal properly. And she covered that deformity for the rest of her life with like big bracelets.
God, I don't like anything where it involves child cruelty or kids.
No, it's awful.
Bad.
Natalie acted in a few more films, and then in 1947 she got the part of Susan in Miracle on 35th Street. I've never seen it. Have you?
No.
I'm not a huge fan of like mushy Christmas films.
You know what? I do love a Christmas film. I don't mind
Christmas films. I prefer them to be funny, like Elf or Die Hard.
Oh yeah.
Or Home Alone. But maybe I'll watch it this year. Maybe we should watch it this year. Bad Santa. Oh my God.
Oh, that's a great one.
That is a great one.
That's what I'm talking about, Christmas films.
Yeah, funny ones. I don't like the mushy ones, you know? I only recently, very, very recently watched for the first time, and I mean last Christmas, watched Love Actually, because I thought it was a mushy one. I used to like that. It is a mushy one, but it's also got enough funny in it that
it does. Yeah. I mean, it's such a British film, isn't it? Like, if you want to learn about English people and the country. Of
every walk of life.
Yeah, exactly. Across
it is literally the documentary that is Love Actually. Yeah. Following Miracle on 35th Street, her career took off, because I mean that is still a #1 Christmas movie. She was starring in about 2 or 3 films a year, which is like a pretty heavy schedule even for an adult. She was in over 20 films as a child, while still having to complete 3 hours of school on set. And she was a straight A student.
Wow.
Like, how the fuck is this girl managing this? She's like
pushy parents. Oh my God, this poor kid is going to have a nervous breakdown at some point.
Yeah, well, this is a quote from Natalie. "I always felt guilty when I knew the crew was sitting around waiting for me to finish my 3 hours of school. As soon as the teacher let us go, I ran to set as fast as I could." It's like, no kid should be having that on their fucking shoulders.
Yeah. No, her mother is cruel.
Right? So now, by the time she gets to teenage years, she appeared in loads of TV shows as well as more and more film roles. But her first key role as a young adult was in Rebel Without a Cause with the legendary James Dean. Have you seen that film?
James Dean. What a hunk.
That's my heart thumping.
Why are there not more men like James Dean around?
So I might rewatch this film as well over Christmas. It was still the time when actors.
You know what? It was the way he had a cigarette hanging out the side of his mouth. That is a good look.
I mean, smoking is bad, blah blah blah. But we are kids of the 80s and 90s, and at the time, smoking really did.
We have a baby picture of Dee with a cigarette on the side of her mouth.
Really
it's not lit. It's not lit.
It's not lit. It's still a bad look, but it happened.
But I want to know: was anyone a baby in the 80s and they don't have pictures of them in close proximity to cigarettes?
I mean, you look through our family albums and you can see people smoking around us on our blowing up birthday candles.
I have the funniest story. Our aunt, who is comedy gold.
We need to make an episode with her.
Comedy gold. Hands down, comedy gold. She was showing us pictures. I think it was like really blurry and black and white or something. It was of you. You were in one of those baby bouncers. She said, "Look, I'm feeding you." But it wasn't. She was holding it straight right by her face. And what she thought was right in the other hand.
Yeah. We should do a thread. Everyone get your photos out of acceptable in the 80s photos, we'll call it.
Send them to us. We'll post them.
We'll post a few on our socials. We want to see them.
Yeah.
Yeah, different time. Anyway, so but I think we can agree there are some things that our parents did that they just did not know was not okay at the time. And then there's Natalie Wood's mum, who what she does is unacceptable in any era. So this is still the time, you remember when like Hollywood actors had to sign contracts with film studios and basically had no control over what films they made. They just had to make whatever films the studio wanted them to make. So Natalie was signed with Warner Brothers. So again, big studio. She won an Academy Award for Best Supporting Actress in Rebel Without a Cause. And Natalie was really proud of this because she claims it was the first script that she actually chose for herself rather than being told to do it by her mother. Which is like, those two things should be in alignment, right? Anyway. All right, trigger warning time. It's around this time when Natalie, because she was only about 15 at the time of Rebel Without a Cause. So she's 15 years old. And this is around the time when something absolutely horrendous happened to Natalie. In 1955, she was 15, her mom took her to an important meeting with a big movie star at Chateau Marmont. This is a hotel. She's having a meeting with a big movie star in his 30s. Natalie went to this meeting in a hotel room alone, age 15, with a married movie star in their 30s. I mean, that in itself, I'm thinking, red flag, problematic.
I mean,
Would you ever?
Her mother should never let that happen.
Would you ever let Rio go into a meeting like
that? No fucking way.
I mean, there's no need for it to be in the hotel room.
No.
I get if it's a famous movie star, maybe they wanted privacy, but then why not let the mother be there?
Exactly.
Like, whose decision was it for her to go in there alone? Totally unacceptable. I mean, I'm not saying the mom knew what was going to happen, but like, why are you letting this kind of scenario?
Where was the parental instinct there?
Right. So the mom is waiting in the car outside with the little sister, Lana, who was about 7 at the time. When Natalie came back from the meeting, she was disheveled and in tears. Her mom told her to basically suck it up or it would end her career. Jeez. It's only years later that Natalie confesses to Lana that she had indeed been raped. Natalie struggled to use that word in describing what happened to herself. Again, super common. But she often talked about how he hurt her.
How can a mother just say, like, suck it up? Do you know what I mean?
Or it'll damage your movie career. Like, that's more important than her mental health, her physical safety. It's just heartbreaking. And do you know who this meeting was with the person who allegedly, I have to say, raped her? Kirk Douglas.
Oh, whoa, shit.
Spartacus. He was in his peak, in his prime then. So I can totally see how it would be super exciting that he wanted a meeting with Natalie. But like I said, there's just no way. He must have requested to meet her alone. But what mother would be like, yeah, sure. Oh, your hotel room? Sure.
God, her mother.
It's just awful.
Yeah.
Somehow Natalie manages to carry on with her amazing career, but roles after this left her unsatisfied because she's always playing this sort of supporting girlfriend. She hasn't even graduated at this point from high school. So in 1956, she graduates and fully transitions into adult acting roles. On the 28th of December, 1957, Natalie married, do you know who?
No.
Robert Wagner.
Who? I actually don't know him.
From Heart to Heart. We used to watch it all the time, remember?
Okay. Yeah. Good show, huh?
Yeah. And that's why the rest of what I'm going to tell you is really
bad.
sad.
Oh, no. Okay, go. Tell me.
Yeah, prepare to hate Robert Wagner from this point forward.
Oh, God. Okay.
I told you, almost everyone in her story, awful. She was 19 and he was about 27. Which isn't the most obscene age difference that we've ever heard of, but it is a significant one. They had been dating for less than a year. In 1958, she was the lead actress opposite Frank Sinatra in King's Go Forth. So she's getting these fucking high-profile roles. She started actually being in a position where she could refuse roles that she didn't like, but then Warner Brothers suspended her until 1959 for doing it. The next few films were not box office successes, and it seems obvious that Natalie was having a bit of a crisis of identity. It's like, well, who fucking doesn't in their late teens, early 20s?
And also, if she's been so heavily controlled by her mother in the studio and then finally has to make her own decisions or is able to, then it must be very hard to know what to do. And
yeah, she's not had a normal childhood. She's now a wife at a very early age. She's never been on her own out of the control of her mother and now her husband. So yeah, it's just, of course she's wondering what the fuck is going on with her life. In 1961, she was cast in Splendor in the Grass, which I have not seen, but apparently is a classic, with Warren Beatty. Director Elia Kazan took a chance on her, even though people were already calling her washed up. She was 23.
Wow. God. Oh my God.
Ugh. The film was a proper adult role, and it was a huge success. Warren Beatty's character isn't getting it from Natalie's character, so he looks elsewhere. Natalie's character can't handle it and ends up in a mental institution.
That's the film storyline?
Yeah, Jesus. Which is almost identical foreshadowing to what happens in her life.
Oh God, creepy.
Her performance in Splendor in the Grass, Natalie received nominations for Academy Award, Golden Globe Award, and BAFTA Award for Best Actress in a leading role. So she did really well out of it. It was around this time, though, that Natalie and Robert Wagner announced their separation, and their divorce was finalized a year later. Lana Wood, the little sister, documents this period in her book, and it's shocking. Not because it involves homosexuality, not at all. We are not shocked by that, but just in terms of the betrayal that Natalie faces. She comes back to the family home where her parents are, and she's in tears, which is very unlike her because she's normally so composed. She had come home to find Robert in bed with his long-term butler. So, you know, at a time where homosexuality was not very acceptable.
Yeah.
And so people often had their friends, in quotation mark. Yeah, so Robert had this long-term butler who seems to be less of a butler and more of his partner in a romantic sense. And obviously this broke her heart because she was genuinely in love with Robert. I'm not going to make any assumptions on whether Robert was gay, straight, bi, pan, whatever. But clearly Natalie expected monogamy and was not getting it. This sadly triggered for her an addiction to sleeping pills that would carry on for much of her life. Soon after this, Natalie started dating Warren Beatty and lived with him for 3 years. There's some debate about whether or not this relationship with Warren Beatty started before or after she ended it with Robert. From what I know of her, I feel like she didn't.
Well, why would she
be?
Yeah, why would she? She's so heartbroken about him cheating on her, Robert.
Well, because people are irrational. So I can totally understand someone getting pissed off and sad that their partner cheated on them, even if they were cheating on their partner. You know, people are rational. But I genuinely think that she married for love and wanted monogamy, a monogamous, loving relationship. Then you know what's coming next. West Side Story.
Woo! I was gonna say, Maria's a good girl. She doesn't cheat.
Loosely based on Romeo and Juliet with rival gangs, the Jets and the Sharks. We already established we would have been Sharks. I would be Shark till I die, I think. Natalie plays Maria, the sister of the head of the Sharks, who falls in love with Tony, a reformed member of the Jets. It does not end well. I haven't seen the remake, but the original, absolute classic.
I used to love Bernardo.
Which one's Bernardo?
Oh, the Sharks,
yeah. FYI, Natalie singing in the film was not actually her singing. I know, but don't worry. It was a woman called Marnie Nixon. So I just want to shout out for Marnie because she was phenomenal. But Natalie did herself sing in Gypsy in 1962, which is another very well-known film. At this point, she's still only about 24. Like, what this woman has achieved is phenomenal. The film credits keep coming, as do the award nominations, including Golden Globe for Best Actress in This Property is Condemned in 1966, opposite Robert Redford, who, of course, was...
I love Robert Redford. Robert Redford in a
at
peacoat.
this time. Yeah.
Why aren't more men like Robert Redford and James Dean? I mean, please don't tell me bad stories about them.
I actually haven't researched their private lives very much, so I don't know.
I have a feeling James Dean got some scandal. I don't know.
Yeah, but is it scandal we're okay with or scandal we're not okay with?
I don't know.
I don't know. I'll have a look and I'll tell you,
yeah.
Okay? Unsurprisingly, all of this took a toll on Natalie and she started therapy. Good for her for reaching out.
So wait, she went out with Robert Redford?
No, she was starring in the film.
Oh, sorry. Okay.
Yeah. She paid $175,000, which must have been a fuck ton at that time, to get her out of the Warner Brothers contract, and fired her entire team, all the agents, managers, publicists, etc., even her accountant. So she clearly was like, I want control over my own life, start from scratch.
Because back then, when you worked for a studio, you were exclusively working for them, weren't you? You couldn't go
and you
off
were their bitch. You could only do projects they gave you. You had limited say on what you could accept or reject.
Yeah. What are you drinking?
I'm drinking out of our Switchblade Sisters Social Club mug. I've actually poured coconut water in my coffee cup.
Yeah. Oh, nice.
And because unless they want to sponsor me, I ain't getting the carton out on this. You should sponsor me. I drink a liter a day of coconut water. Not innocent coconut water. I don't want to be sponsored by them. I find it tastes weird. Anyway, where was I? Yeah, so she's getting a bit more autonomy, and she actually takes a 3-year acting break, which must have been the equivalent of retiring permanently.
I was just going to say, for how long she's been in acting and the age she was, 3 years is like proportionally a lot of her life.
Right? Especially seeing as 23, they're already counting her as washed up, you know?
Yeah.
So between 66 and 69, she took a little acting break. In 1969, she married British producer Richard Gregson after dating for nearly 3 years.
Okay.
She came out of retirement for a film called Bob and Carol and Ted and Alice in 1969. This film was about sexual liberation. We're in the 60s now. And then she had her first daughter in 1970, Natasha Gregson, Natasha being Natalie's birth name. But in 1971, she filed for divorce, and it was finalized a year later because she had caught Gregson cheating on her. So second time her marriage ends. I know, this poor woman. Soon after, though, guess who she starts dating?
Who?
Robert Wagner again.
Oh, I thought you were going to say Robert Redford. She deserves that. Robert Redford.
Wasn't Robert Redford with Barbra Streisand?
Was he? Oh, I like him more for that, actually.
Wait, let me Google.
Were they?
I feel like, I know they acted together. Robert Redford, Barbra Streisand. Oh, no, they were in The Way They Were. I don't know if they dated. Yeah. Okay. Anyway. Okay, so she starts dating this piece of shit again. And I'm confident and happy to say that because he is a piece of shit in many ways. So in July,
doing?
I don't know. In July 1972, they remarried aboard the Rambling Rose boat off the coast of Malibu. She told her sister, "Better the devil you know."
Oh God, that's sad. When that's your philosophy on life, it's not looking good, is it?
She's been beaten down. Her second husband cheated on her as well, and she's just thinking, well, this clearly, like with Amy Fisher, this is what happens in a relationship.
I'll tell you what, there's a common thread. Quite a few common threads in a lot of these stories.
Yeah. So in March 1974, Robert Wagner and Natalie Wood have a daughter together, Courtney. As a reminder, Natalie had a child, Natasha, from a previous marriage, and Robert Wagner had a kid from his in-between marriage as well, because he was married to someone else as well. So there's now 3 kids. One of them is biologically both Natalie Wood and Robert Wagner's. Yeah. Later on in her career, she worked with Wagner again, and she also worked with Laurence Olivier. So she's still fucking rolling,
she's a big shot, yeah.
She worked on an adaptation of Cat on a Hot Tin Roof in 1979. She also starred in Peeper in 1975 with Michael Caine. And
Oh,
Sean
I
Connery.
love Michael Caine.
Oh, love
He's
him.
a good guy. If you ever tell me a bad story about Michael Caine, he's a good fan. And I love his wife, Shakira.
Yeah, I mean, there's some people, if you heard negative stories, it actually breaks your heart.
I wouldn't fucking believe it. Michael Caine, to me, Michael Caine is like a good British gentleman.
Yeah. And Sean Connery, she starred with Sean Connery in 1979 in the film
Don't tell me bad stories.
No, I don't have anything bad to say about that.
Because you know what? Our dad always said he looks like Sean Connery, and it's kind of true, huh?
What? Our dad says that he himself...
He looks like Sean Connery, yeah. The Palestinian
Anyways.
Sean Connery. Kinda, it's true. I see it. Okay.
She also had loads of TV credits under her belt, and she also got the film rights of a book. So she was thinking of her life beyond acting. So she's clever.
Yeah.
Probably because people are already calling her washed up, but she's smart enough to realize that her time as a leading lady had an expiry date, unfortunately. At the time of her death, Natalie was working on the science fiction film Brainstorm in 1983 with Christoper Walken.
Oh, really? I wouldn't have put them in the same era.
Yeah. We're about to put them in the same boat on the night of her death.
Oh, fuck. Okay.
And I struggle with this because I actually genuinely love Christoper Walken as an actor, and I can't...
He's a kind of creepy looking one, right?
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
Okay.
Do we like him?
We're unsure. We're unsure at this point. We'll talk more about what we think about him afterwards.
Okay.
The end of this film had to be rewritten because of her death. She literally died while it was being filmed, and they decided to release it. In total, Natalie appeared in 56 films. And she died when she was 43. So that is fucking phenomenal.
Wow.
So,
Jesus, that's more than a film per year of her life. I mean,
yeah, especially seeing as she didn't start as a baby either. So the run up to this fateful boat trip, right? Lana, her sister, says that Natalie was nervous and all over the place. Like she was not herself in the days, weeks running up to it. Like Natalie was very composed, very stylish, always ready. No, would never think of going anywhere without her makeup or whatever. And she was just not like that in the run up. She was frazzled. So it's not great, is it? So
yeah, I can imagine the responsibility she had from such a young age. You would learn composure, wouldn't you?
And it was, remember, she was raised that it was all about how you look, how you are appearing in the media, your career, etc. So it was all about the show. So I'm going to talk about the weekend of her death. Weird, because it's over a Thanksgiving weekend, and we are recording this over a Thanksgiving weekend. So that is spooky. Robert Wagner had an 18-meter yacht, which he named Splendor, with reference to Natalie's film, but with a U in it, because Splendor in the Grass is spelt the American way. And I don't know whether he's trying to be clever or posh, but it had a U in it. And full disclosure, regardless of what actually happened that night, either way, I think Robert Wagner is a piece of shit. And everything I say will be tainted with that judgment, that he is a piece of shit. And I'm really sad about it because we used to love Heart to Heart so much, didn't we?
Yeah, it was a great show.
It was a great show, and I will stand by it, but I don't think I can ever, now having researched this case as much as I have, I don't think I can ever watch anything with Robert Wagner ever again, which is really unfortunate. I mean, it wasn't, one positive I'll say about him is that he was a great actor. He was a great actor, but that's the nicest thing I can say about him. Oh, and that he had great taste in women, because Natalie Wood sounds like a fucking amazing badass. So they were...
It's sad when you get to hear, get to hear more about the person behind the whole story.
So they have this boat, and they're on this boat this Thanksgiving weekend with Christoper Walken, who was her co-star on Brainstorm, the film she was working on at the time of her death. So there's Natalie Wood, Robert Wagner, Christoper Walken, and the fourth person on the boat was a guy called Dennis DeVerne, who was the captain. He had been captain for them on this boat since 1974. So at this point, it's like almost 10 years.
Okay.
And
so we're in the 80s now.
Yeah, 83. No, sorry, 81. 1981. Thanksgiving 1981. And so he had been working for them for a long time, and he was very much a friend in that he used to take part on the social side of being on the boat, which you wouldn't always get. The captain might be completely separate to the social, you know, the parties, the dinners, etc., but he was often included. Now, it should be known that Natalie had a fear of water. She loved boats. She loved being on boats, but she had, and this fear was widely documented, widely known.
She could go on boats.
Yeah, but she was, her mom visited a gypsy before they were born, and the gypsy told her, "You will have, in quotation marks, an exquisite child who will die by drowning in dark water."
For fuck's sake.
Which is obviously a fear that the mom transferred onto Natalie. And the insecurity she passed on to Lana, because she was not the exquisite child that her mom thought would die by drowning. Yeah. Natalie actually told a journalist only a few weeks before her death, "I'm afraid of water that is dark."
It's really funny because I actually have a fear of dark, murky water. I mean, like, I'm sure a lot of people do, but I do, but like, more like pools and like jacuzzis and hot tubs. Like,
well, I told you, I love going to swimming in the outdoor pool, and I have goggles, and every time I get in the pool, the first thing I do is go underwater to just make sure there's no corpses.
Do you know what it is though? Like, I'm more afraid of, like, I'm going off on a tangent, but it's not so swimming pools, it's not the ocean, it's not things like that. It's more, I think, from like horror films when there's like murders in old houses, and like it's like one of those mosaic tiled hot tubs and creepy ones like that. Like, I recently went to the Radisson Blu Hotel, which is a 1920s hotel, in October, for mine and Jim's anniversary. We went as for a spa day, and it was actually really nice, but it's like a 1920, oh, it was creepy. It was right after you recorded a creepy hotels episode as well. And the hot tub, it was literally a fucking mosaic hot tub, like the one I'm afraid of. You know, I don't know. I know
exactly.
Yeah,
I know exactly what you mean.
I think it's because I've seen like murder houses where they have like those kind of hot tubs.
And you know, a fear of open water.
It's not irrational. It's not irrational. There are things to be afraid of there, as well as drowning.
Yeah. There was a film shoot. I can't remember what film it was, but she actually had to film a scene where she was kind of drowning or struggling in water, and the terror was real. Yes, she was very publicly, openly afraid of water. It was known about her. Especially anyone who'd gone on a boat with her would have.
Did her mother ever tell her what the psychic said? Because I think that, oh, for fuck's sake.
Yeah. Raised her daughter to stay away from water unless it was required in a movie, because her exquisite child was going to die of drowning. So the day before Natalie's death, Friday, the 27th of November, 1981, this was, like I said, Thanksgiving weekend, the boat left the Marina del Rey towards Avalon on Catalina Island. I am going to share my screen so that you can see this map. Just bear with me. Bear with. Okay, so Marina del Rey is up here. Can you see?
Yep.
Can you see my mouse?
Mm-hmm.
You can see my mouse wiggling.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Marina del Rey, and then this is Catalina Island, and this is Avalon here, which is not the capital city of Avalon, of Santa Catalina Island, but you know, the main town, let's say.
Yeah.
So they take the boat down this way. Okay. Early on Saturday morning, they sailed around the island a little bit to the isthmus and got a mooring. So the evening of the 28th of November, 1981, Saturday, 28th of November, they head to the island off the boat. They go to Douglas Harbor Reef Restaurant and Bar. The waitress who's serving them said that Natalie didn't seem in a great mood, and she was making complaints about a lot of things, like having too much light on the table. And Lana says in her book that this was extremely unlike Natalie to make a fuss in public, to not be anything but perfect, composed.
So what do you think it is? That she was nervous about going on the boat?
The manager of Douglas's Harbor Reef Bar and Restaurant, Don Whiting, remember his name because he comes up later. Okay. He noticed a lot of tension between Robert and Natalie. They actually, a part of the way through the evening, through their meal, Robert decides he doesn't like any of the wines on the menu and sends Christoper Walken and Dennis DeVerne, the captain, back to the boat to get some of his stock of wine. Mm-hmm. And then at around 10:30, they all head back to the boat for more drinks. At this point, Dawn, who might be my crush of the story, called the harbor master and asked him to watch the Wagner party because they'd all been drinking a lot and were getting in a dinghy to go back to the boat. So he's like, just be aware, you know, keep an eye out for them, right? But there was something going on enough that this manager called the harbor master to get him to keep an eye out. I don't know how often that happened. Very responsible of Don. Don closed the restaurant at midnight and went back to his boat. He lived on a boat. Robert claims that Natalie went missing from the boat just after midnight. Dawn picked up an emergency message at around 1:30 a.m. So by Robert Wagner's admission, she goes missing at midnight. By 1:30 a.m., an emergency message goes out just on the regular, like, imagine a CB radio, but for boats. Yeah. So it wasn't to the authorities. It was just to the other boats in the area. Dawn hears this emergency message and recognizes Robert's voice saying, "This is the Splendor asking for help." Dawn notes that Robert sounded very drunk. So Dawn calls back on the radio, and Robert said he thought Natalie went to shore and could Dawn go and check?
Who would have taken her back to shore?
We'll get to that.
Oh.
A second person, all great questions. We'll get to that. A second person, Paul Wintler, also heard the call and also started looking for the dinghy because by this point, Robert Wagner says that the dinghy, the Valiant, their dinghy, you know, their like life
the rafting. Tender?
Their tender, yes. If you are a fan of Below Deck, their tender was also missing. Okay. So this guy, Paul Wintler, went to go look for this. And then he went to the Splendor, the boat itself. Dawn at 2:30 a.m.-ish was checking ashore. He couldn't see Natalie, couldn't see the dinghy. So he informed the harbor master, who apparently didn't pick up the emergency call. The Coast Guard was only called at 3:30 a.m.
Well, they weren't. So who wasn't raising panic? Because if somebody's going missing off a boat, and like, I mean, surely that would raise alarm. Why did they wait that long?
Right. And so I'm not saying it was Dawn or this Paul Wintler's responsibility to call. Mm-hmm. I'm just raising the fact that she goes missing at midnight and they only call the Coast Guard at 3:30. And this is a woman who's terrified of water and drunk. So there is one little thing that happened the night before that makes me understand a little bit why they might not have called immediately. Because basically the night before she had spent the night at a hotel, and I will talk more about this. She had decided to leave the boat to go stay the night at a hotel on the island. I'll go into that a little bit. That's the only reason the only justification I can think for waiting is that she had this past experience of leaving the boat.
Yeah.
But you'll see the circumstances are very different, and her own husband would have sensed that it was very different. And so I still don't think it's reason enough to wait this long before sounding the alarm. And I mean the proper alarm, not just calling out for a little like, oh, I could do with some help here, you know? At 8 a.m. on the 29th of November, authorities, so on the Saturday, 8 a.m. on the Saturday, the next morning, authorities find first the dinghy and then Natalie's body.
Oh my God.
Sorry, did you not even know that this ends in death?
No, I did. I didn't know that they ever found her, to be fair. I didn't know that part of the story.
So here's a little
I didn't know whether her body went missing. I didn't really think about that.
So they're at the other end of the island from Avalon.
Yeah.
The Splendor was moored here. You can see the Harbor Reef restaurant that they've been to the night before. So they go back to their boat. Natalie goes missing at midnight. And at 8 a.m., the authorities find the dinghy about a mile away at Blue Cavern Point. Here.
Did she?
Wait.
Take her shot? Oh.
Wait. And then soon after, they find her body here. It should be noted that Natalie, when she went missing, was just wearing her nightgown, no underwear, and socks. She was wearing socks and a nightgown. She had gone missing with her, like a heavy down jacket, but she wasn't wearing it when her body was found. Her sister Lana found out about the death. This is heartbreaking. When a friend called to offer condolences after hearing about it on the radio.
Jesus.
Can you imagine? Like, it seems incredibly heartless that Robert didn't call the family as soon as anything happened, let alone when the body was found. That the press found out before the sister and the mother.
Yeah.
It's just heartbreaking. On the day of the announcement of her death, Lana and her mum had visitors offering condolences, and Lana overheard her mum say the wrong one died.
Whoa, God, if we didn't already know what type of mother this was. Whoa, who can say that about their kid?
I totally get that this woman is experiencing one of the worst things a mother could ever go through, right?
Whoa,
and everyone grieves differently, but that's next level. And Lana's also going through something horrendous, losing her sister.
God,
so
what a fucking evil woman.
I just can't imagine, I don't want to get too emotional, but I can't imagine losing you. Remember that time when I cried once when you asked who of us you thought I thought would die first?
Oh my God, Deanna crying is quite a theme.
And I'm not that sensitive. It's just when it comes to you.
You're sensitive, but you're empathetic. That's what
I don't cry as much as I used to, but
you're not like self-indulgent crier. You're an empathetic crier.
The fact the thought of losing my sister, losing you, and anyone saying the wrong one died, on top of that, let alone your own mother, like, that is just too much to fucking process. I can't even, hearing that story is a lot.
I hate her mother. Honestly, I hate her mother.
Yeah, you should. The investigation into Nat's death raised a lot of questions, and much of it only became public knowledge when Lana got a hold of the police report, decades later. The main salon of the boat was reportedly in disarray, with broken glass on the floor. Robert blamed the rough seas, and we've already referenced it below deck. We know it can happen, that the rough seas can cause this sort of thing, but we'll come back to that. Her autopsy found alcohol in her system, which wasn't a surprise. We knew that they had all been drinking, and motion sickness tablets and painkillers in her bloodstream, which all probably would have contributed to her feeling more drunk. There were bruises on her body and arms and an abrasion on her left cheek. There was no conclusion given as to how she obtained those. The coroner, Thomas Noguchi, have you heard of his name?
No.
Remember his name.
Okay.
The coroner, Thomas Noguchi, found 0.14% alcohol in her blood, which was fairly high. It was equal to 7 or 8 glasses of wine. And Natalie was she was petite and she wasn't a big drinker, so that was quite a lot.
Oh, that's a lot. Oh God.
Not a surprise, because they were on holiday, Thanksgiving holiday.
A couple of bottles, huh?
7 or 8 glasses is, coming up to 2 bottles. He ruled her time of death as just after midnight, and ruled the cause of death to be accidental drowning and hypothermia, claiming she might have slipped. And the abrasions might have been from her slipping into the water and trying to get out of the water back onto the dinghy. Little side note on Thomas Noguchi. He was known at the time as the coroner to the stars, because he was the medical chief medical officer, that was the word I was looking for, in LA, in the Hollywood area. So it's not a surprise that he was the one that was doing all the high profile autopsies. So he performed autopsies on Robert F. Kennedy, Marilyn Monroe, Sharon Tate, Janis Joplin, John Belushi, and a whole bunch of others I hadn't heard of because I'm pretty uncultured.
Wow, it's quite a CV.
Right? But he was also in the papers again a year after Natalie's death because he was accused of selling information to the press about these autopsies. contaminating and destroying evidence, and general mismanagement of the coroner's office. So he was demoted. Why would he
contaminate?
Money?
I
don't know.
Okay. To get people, like, basically to cover up murders?
Well, that's the fear, isn't it? What kind of evidence are you contaminating? What are you doing it for? Why are you doing it? Why are you destroying evidence? Is it because it doesn't fit in with your nice, tidy conclusions? Is it because you're being paid off? Is it because you liked this star and didn't want them going to jail?
I'm gonna guess that was to cover up murders.
This is a picture of the Splendor, by the way.
Yeah.
So fairly decent sized boat, but also not mammoth, right? It's very important to know. You would very easily find a person if you're looking for them on this boat.
By yacht standards, this is a modest size.
Yeah. I mean, it had a crew of one, essentially, the captain. I'm sure Natalie and Robert were fairly adept at doing boaty stuff because they were on the water a lot, but it's not a below deck size yacht. No. You know what I mean? But it's very important to remember that if you were looking for someone on that boat, you would find them if they were on that boat, right?
Yeah.
So the death was ruled an accident within 2 weeks. They wrapped up the investigation within 2 weeks, which is super quick.
Okay.
Especially considering there were still unanswered questions. This Noguchi, as crap as he was still saying, I don't know how she got these abrasions. It's an accidental drowning, but I don't know what actually happened in this accident. And the family accepted this because what else could they do? These are like the authorities telling them it was an accident.
And to be honest, it's a really logical conclusion to think that a drunk person could slip, rather than somebody who's afraid of the water getting in the tender.
Well, yes, and also I just want to say the alternative to it being an accident is actually really horrendous. And I can understand why your mind just won't want to go there. Lana was quoted saying, knowing how it happened wouldn't bring my sister back, which also kind of sums up, I think, part of the attitude at times. But I think Lana got to the point where she's like, no, fuck it. I need to know because these things are not adding up. And the more I learn, the more it's confusing me. At this point, during the investigation and when it's wrapped up, both Dennis DeVerne, the captain, and Christoper Walken are backing up Robert's account. Christoper said that on the first day, Friday, they went shopping and eating and drinking on the island. He was feeling a bit sick, like seasick, so he went to bed early. He could hear, in quotations, hubbub, and Robert and Dennis came down to get him to get involved. Christoper Walken said, so first of all, this tells me that something about Dennis. It tells me that if Dennis, who knows Natalie and Robert well and is used to them, wanted to involve a stranger to Dennis had never met Christoper Walken, then it must have been some hubbub, right?
Yeah.
Christoper understandably said he didn't want to get involved in husband and wife stuff. Like, he's meant to be on a holiday, And
he probably doesn't understand the seriousness of what could potentially have been going on.
No, he's not going to think, oh, this is going to end in a death, right? Yeah. But he said next morning, everything seemed fine. The night of her death, Robert was complaining that she was away from home too much. So they were arguing again. At one point, Chris, I think because he felt uncomfortable, went out to get some air. And when he came back, everyone was apologetic. Natalie went to the bedroom, and later Robert noticed that she was missing. And then that the dinghy was missing too. He told Walken that it wasn't a big deal. Like the night before, she went to a hotel on the island. So during the whole night that Natalie was missing, Christoper was basically asleep throughout. They never really bothered to wake him up.
Okay.
Which it's weird also. But then maybe...
Yeah, I mean, you'd expect they'd wake him up to see if he knew anything.
Right? He wasn't really involved in the story. But then also we don't really know because it wasn't really investigated properly. There were so many questions not asked. So as far as we know, nothing has been said to go against this. Christoper was basically asleep until much later on. Maybe they woke him up when they called the Coast Guard. He must have woken up when people started arriving on the boat, but he was asleep through at least the initial search. Turns out there was a boat nearby called the Capricorn. Marilyn Wade and her boyfriend, John Payne.
Who are they? Are they famous?
No, I just think Wade and Payne. They were on this boat and they heard screams at midnight. and someone shouting to get the fuck off my boat. If people in a neighboring boat could hear screaming from possibly Natalie, I find it weird that 3 men on the same boat didn't hear screaming.
Yeah.
Right? There was also, I couldn't tell if it was either this boat or another boat. Because, you know, this is a holiday weekend. There was loads of boats in the area, right? Either this boat or another boat heard loud music. And they thought it was just drunk people having a joke around and a party and stuff. So here are some theories.
Okay.
I'm going to go into some theories, and then I'm going to go into more information about what actually happened that night. So,
okay.
Because I'm doing things in the order that they happen.
You are making the story, you're telling it well. And it's not boring.
Is it boring?
No,
is it boring now?
No.
Right. So here are some theories, right? Because one of the big factors in trying to figure out what happened is the fact that Natalie was so petrified of water, but she was also really good on boats, very familiar on boats. So there was a theory that Robert advocated for and continued to advocate for, even after it was kind of disproven. He believed that Natalie heard the dinghy thumping against the boat, like it wasn't secured properly, and that she went to go secure it more tightly and slipped and fell in. But the reason why this is weird is, first of all, it's happened in the past where this boat has been thumping. Sorry. And needed to be secured more tightly so that it didn't make this annoying noise. And what Natalie did was ask Dennis or Robert to take care of it.
Yeah.
So it's weird that she would go do it herself. On top of that, where the boat is secured by these lines is nowhere near down the swim step where she would have had to fall into the water. It was actually up in one of the decks. So where she would have to secure the boat is not somewhere where she would easily fall into the water.
Yeah.
So it's very, very strange to think that that's a theory. But it's the one that Robert thinks. Another theory floated around. Oh, that's a terrible choice of words. Sorry. Was that she decided that they had been having awkward weekend, night, so forth. And so in a sulk, Natalie decides to either go back to the island or go boat hopping. Because again, Thanksgiving weekend, loads of people have taken their boats down to Catalina for the holiday weekend. But we are, if you want to believe this theory, we are meant to believe that Natalie, who, first of all, never went in the dinghy alone. She always had someone else, captaining the dinghy. That she, in the middle of the night, with her fear of water and her dislike of going in that boat, the dinghy, on her own, decided to gate crash parties or go back on land, dressed in just her nightgown and socks and no underwear. This Natalie Wood, who was always so pristine and perfectly turned out.
That one doesn't sound like a legitimate story.
Super unlikely, right? I mean, I know we all do stupid things when we're drunk, but this is just so out of character.
Yeah.
Another theory is that she caught Christoper Walken and Robert Wagner in bed together.
Oh, okay. Didn't predict that one.
But this one, no, but this one I think came out of the fact that she had caught Robert in bed with the butler.
Okay. Yeah.
It's unlikely because I showed you the boat and the size of the boat. It seems very unlikely that anyone would think they could sneak away on this boat, and not be noticed with only 4 people on it. Another theory is that she committed suicide. This one is backed up, in quotation marks, by the fact that she had a previous suicide attempt.
Oh, okay.
In 1966, she had taken an overdose. And this was attributed to her breakup with either Robert Wagner or Warren Beatty. But actually, Lana, her sister, says it was neither of them. It was because she was having an affair with the married director, Sidney Pollock, who directed her in This Property is Condemned. She overdosed on sleeping pills, and a friend found her in time. But Lana said that this was a totally different scenario. In her 1966 attempt, she had isolated herself for months from family and friends. But in the run-up to her actual death, she had been engaging, she had kids, she was working, she was excited about projects in her future. So it was a totally different scenario. That's not to say it's not possible, but it was, it just didn't ring true. And also, would someone who's got a mortal fear of water choose to drown themselves?
Yeah.
I don't know. So after Natalie's death, Lana actually reached out to Robert Wagner. They had had a very difficult relationship and they had had falling outs and so forth. But Lana really felt like nothing was bigger than this and they should be grieving their loss together. There were kids involved. Lana also had a kid. So, you know, there were cousins that she felt they should grow up together. She also wanted answers, but he kept on just telling her it was an accident and no more. It was an accident. She's like, okay, fine. But like, what happened? You know, I get it. It's an accident, but what happened step by step, right? Wouldn't you want to know?
Yeah. Oh God. I mean, you know that I want details of every story of everything. Like I need.
I know. And this is one about her dear sister's death. And
yeah. I would want to hear it over and over and over and over again. Also to make sure the details were correct every time it was told.
Right. But he made it clear right from the start, almost immediately after her death, that he basically wanted nothing to do with Lana, which I find incredibly sad. Worse, he actually, I will get into it, but like actively sought out to destroy the relationship between the family members and so forth.
Wow.
Natalie's funeral, not a surprise, was very star-studded. Her pallbearers included Frank Sinatra, Fred Astaire, Laurence Olivier, and Gregory Peck.
Wow.
I mean
quite a lot of big names.
Yeah, and that's just her pallbearers, you know? Robert kept distancing himself from Lana, and Lana found that he actually at one point blacklisted her, so she was struggling to get work. She, at this point, was still occasionally acting, but had left acting behind to work more in the behind-the-scenes production side. She was really struggling to find work, and someone eventually told her, he's blacklisted you. He was a big star. Natalie was a big star.
What was his motivation? Why was he so scared?
I wonder if it's because she kept pursuing this issue of how her sister died. He wanted to discredit her, make things difficult for her. Maybe he was jealous of their closeness. I don't know. He's clearly a fucking asshole.
Bad guy.
Decades later, Lana gets an out of the blue phone call from, who do you think?
Christoper Walken.
Close. Dennis Davern.
Okay.
The captain.
Wow. Okay.
She didn't know him previously. Like, I think she'd met him in passing or at social things or whatever, but she wasn't close to him. She didn't know him, you know? And he calls her out of the blue. He is eaten up by guilt.
Whoa. Okay. What made him sit on it for decades?
Well, I'll tell you why I think he was sitting on it, and I'll tell you why he eventually came out with, you know, with it. He kept information from the cops at the time of the investigation. Dennis says the trip was tense right from the start because Robert was annoyed that Natalie invited Christoper Walken.
Okay.
Dennis says that Natalie had no idea how to operate the dinghy on her own, so wouldn't have tried to go in the boat ashore or to other boats, especially in her pajamas. Before dinner on the day that Natalie died, before Dennis and Robert joined Nat and Chris ashore, Christoper Walken, sorry, I've abbreviated their names in my notes. So basically, Natalie and Christoper Walken went ashore on the night that she died. And Dennis and Robert joined them later on. And when they were alone, Dennis was trying to convince Robert to cut the trip short. But Robert was determined in like a really vengeful way to give Natalie a full weekend with her co-star. So basically, it seems like he was angry Natalie invited Christoper Walken. There were sort of rumors that he thought they were having an affair.
Yeah.
But the weekend was so tense that Dennis, the captain, started it off by sharing out Quaaludes to ease tension.
What's Quaaludes? What sort of drug is that?
Like relaxants, you know?
Okay. Where can we get some?
The loud music that the neighboring boat heard, do you remember?
Yeah.
That was Dennis who turned on this loud music to hide the sounds of Natalie and Robert arguing moments before she went missing.
Okay.
Dennis says at one point, Robert was the one smashing glass. Remember there was broken glass found in the salon? He smashed a wine bottle on the coffee table and shouted, so Christoper Walken do you want to fuck my wife? Is that what you want?
Wow.
I mean,
and
this
Christoper
is
Walken never openly said all this? Wow.
So I don't know whether this is the point that he goes out for a bit of fresh air. I mean, I really hate this. You've never watched It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia, have you?
No.
There's, I mean, it's fucking hilarious because it's these group of just truly awful human beings. But there's one episode where they get a boat, and Dennis, one of the guys, is clearly a psychopath. If it came out in a later series that he was a serial killer or serial rapist, you'd be like, yep, you know, totally makes sense. But there's one episode where they buy a boat and Dennis is talking about the implication.
Okay.
And the others are like, what do you mean the implication? It's like, you know, you're on a boat, the implication, like, we're not going to do anything to you, but if we did, no one would know because we're on a boat.
Oh.
You should watch It's Always Sunny. It's really funny.
I think I tried. To be honest, I remember vaguely trying to watch one episode and I didn't laugh. I don't think I got it.
Do you know what? Try again and stick through season 1 until
season
you get to
one. That's a long time to stick.
No. They're very, very short episodes, and I think season 1's very short because the reason is season 2, Danny DeVito comes in as the dad of 2 of the characters.
Why didn't I find it funny?
Huh?
Why did I not find it funny? I can't remember. I can't remember. Is it, what kind of humor is it again?
I mean, it's dark and twisted.
Oh, should find that funny.
And it gets darker and twistier.
Oh, okay, I'll try again.
And like I said, when it's I liked season 1 anyways, but when Danny DeVito comes in, it goes up another level. That's all.
Okay, I'll try again.
Okay. If you do anything, watch this episode about the implication because we'll put a link to the YouTube clip. I know it's on there. So yeah, it makes me feel like that. Like there's something about being on a boat that like there's just an added level of danger between the drowning, between the possibility that no one can come to you to your rescue, etc. So yeah, so they're having an argument. This is the point that Chris steps out for a bit. I mean, who can blame him? He's having the holiday from hell. It's like, you know, you can imagine Natalie being like, come on our boat for a bit, you know, long weekend, and him being like, awesome, I have no one around to spend Thanksgiving with. Sounds fun. And then just being stuck with this arguing couple the entire time and no one else except for the captain. And then on top of that, I don't know whether he's faking the seasickness or whether he's like, I need to get the fuck away from these people. But like, it's shit, isn't it?
Yeah.
So then Natalie goes to the bedroom and Robert follows her. He always maintained that she went to bed, or he thought she went to bed. But Dennis's version, Robert follows her. Dennis hears loud shouting and slamming of things or people against walls. Okay. He actually goes to the room to try to defuse the situation, and Robert yells at him to basically fuck off.
Okay.
At 11 o'clock at night, Robert and Nat's fight moves to the back of the boat.
How long's it been going on for by this point?
They arrived back to the boat at like 10:30ish from the restaurant. So it's not been going on long, but it's escalating and it's traveling around this whole boat. This is when Dennis turned on the loud music to cover up the sounds of their argument. Because, you know, you've seen like marinas or moorings when they're busy. Like sometimes the boats are only a few meters away. Yeah. You know, the other boats. So he's obviously like trying to protect their privacy, stop people coming. Oh, no. Dennis has at this point a peek at the back deck, and Natalie was in her nightgown, and Robert yells to her to get off my fucking boat, which is corroborated by the neighboring boat, the Capricorn. You remember Wayne and Payne? They said they heard someone shout, get off my fucking boat. Today, even Robert finally admits that they did have an argument on that night in his autobiography, Pieces of My Heart. But Dennis was alarmed enough to go to the rear deck. But when he gets there, Robert is alone. Okay. And Robert says, Natalie's gone missing. So he's not said, oh, she left, she went that way to bed or whatever. He said at this point, she's gone missing. He was literally a couple minutes before arguing with her on that same spot, witnessed by Dennis.
It's an interesting choice of words, because missing is normally when it's been a while, you can't find them.
Right? So I don't know the layout of this boat, whether Dennis has arrived and the only exit entrance to this deck. In my mind, you would just say, I don't know. Dennis searches the boat. We saw it's like a decent sized yacht, but it's not a huge amount of space. And then Robert tells him when he comes back, so Dennis comes back and says he can't find Natalie. And at that point, Robert tells him that the dinghy is also missing. Dennis goes to call for help and turn on the searchlight. And Robert stops him, telling him, how would this look?
Oh my God. If that isn't an admission of guilt, if you were worried about somebody, you would get help immediately. I mean, I think that says it all.
That wouldn't even be, I know no one ever knows how they're going to react in the situation, but I cannot imagine that would be, if you thought your wife was missing, fear of water, etc. She's definitely not on the boat. For your first thought to be, how would this look?
Yeah.
You don't want to turn on the searchlight. I mean, presumably she's not been missing long. If they turn on the searchlight, they might be able to see her sailing away.
Yeah.
You know, even if you thought, oh, she's just gone, the dinghy gone somewhere. Even just reassure you, oh, there she is. Okay,
so what do you do with it? What do you do with the dinghy? Okay.
So remember, she's gone missing around midnight. They've done this little search. We know that they only called for help in the first instance at 1:30 a.m. just on the normal radio. Robert then, before they search properly, before they call anyone, Robert pours himself a scotch and one for Dennis and says he doesn't want to bring attention to this as it might tarnish his reputation.
I mean, why did Dennis sit on this for all these years?
Well, you'll see. This is the moment, perhaps, where if help had been called, she may have been saved.
Yeah.
1 hour later, Robert is crying, but it still takes him another hour to call for help. Even then, he refused to call authorities, calling for help to search some places on the island instead of actually calling the Coast Guard. This is when he calls Don Whiting and and Don comes and tries, looks ashore, looks at the restaurant, which he knows is closed up anyways, looks around for the dinghy. I mean, this guy, Don, the manager of the restaurant, has so far done far more than her own husband in trying to find Natalie Wood. Even when the local harbor master, Owen Odin, arrived on the deck and said they should call the Coast Guard, Robert repeats to this guy that he didn't want to ruin his image.
Oh my God. Why is he even using these phrases? Clearly he's a guilty party. Why is he so dumb as to not even try? Is he just so arrogant?
Because normally you hear when people go missing and children go missing, family members go missing, people are calling the authorities, the police, or whatever. In this case, it's the Coast Guard because they're on an island on the boat. They're calling the authorities and being told, oh, we have to wait 24 hours or whatever. And they're desperate to move the search on and to move the investigation on.
Oh my God, this guy.
Robert finally gives in at 3:30 a.m. Why did he need this convincing? This is 3.5 hours after Natalie initially went missing. He finally calls the Coast Guard. And then he orders Dennis not to say anything when questioned. Of course, this is Dennis's version. It's Dennis's word versus Robert's word. But there's some damning evidence that kind of leans towards Dennis's version more so than Robert's. Dennis said he didn't even have to lie to the police, though, because they barely asked him any questions. I don't know whether they were starstruck, because obviously they've got Christoper Walken, Robert Wagner, and Natalie Wood, all fucking major stars of their time.
Yeah.
Christoper Walken a little bit less so. I think he was on the up and up, but I can imagine these sort of not much goes on this island, especially not this high profile and not, a death of this nature. So that he barely gets questions. Dennis's lawyer is paid for by Robert. So that answers some questions, doesn't it?
Why did Dennis need a lawyer?
Because I presume they all needed lawyers.
Okay.
Because it was an investigation.
Okay.
And then Dennis lived in Robert's house for a year after, with Robert getting him acting jobs. So it kind of sounds like Dennis was bought by Robert.
Yeah.
Yeah. A couple of days after Dennis's call out of the blue, Robert's attorney calls Lana. Robert had heard that Lana was staying with her daughter at her mom's house. Natalie gave the house to the mom for use in her lifetime. But now that Natalie was dead, Robert owned it and gave Lana instructions to move out immediately.
Wow.
It's come on, what is it hurting you? Anyway.
Yeah, he got nervous. about her.
He's intimidating her, right? He's trying to intimidate her. So she moves out 2 weeks later. She soon gets hold of the police report, which she had never seen in full before. And she goes through it with a friend of hers who's a retired police officer. The police report is dated 11th of December, 1981. So wrapped up, like I said, in 2 weeks. The first noticeable thing was that Roger Smith, the lifeguard paramedic who had found Natalie's body, wasn't even interviewed by the police, which seems very weird.
Yeah.
He was in his rescue boat about 100 yards from the Splendor on the night that this happened. And if he had been called immediately, he would have been there in an instant. And apparently, due to the condition of her body and the stages of rigor mortis, she could have been alive in the water for hours.
Oh my God.
Before her death.
That is so sad.
So if he had called, there's so many stages, immediately after her disappearance, that if help had been called sooner, she may have been saved.
Yeah.
It's really sad. The couple on the boat, the Capricorn, that heard the loud music, heard someone shouting, "Get the fuck off my boat," heard a woman screaming. They had kind of given a testimonial, but they were never interrogated by the police. Again, weird. They also heard someone say, "Oh, hold on, we're coming to get you."
Oh, that's creepy.
The other weird thing is that before...
Who said that?
I don't know. But the other weird thing is that before and during their police interrogations, Christoper Walken and Robert Wagner were not separated.
Okay.
So given loads of time to come up with a story. Yeah.
Oh my God, there's so many holes in this.
Right? Robert's interview, listen to this bit. This is shocking. Robert's interview, his only interview, started at 9:54 a.m. So 6 minutes to 10 a.m.
Okay.
It was terminated because he was upset, which is very weird that it was terminated, never restarted once he calmed down. I don't think this happens very often, but I think if someone got too worked up to be able to answer questions properly, I can imagine them putting a pin in it and waiting until someone calmed down. But they never went back and interrogated further. So his interview started at 6 minutes to 10. They interrogate him. He gets so worked up that they terminate the interview for good. And then Christoper Walken's interview starts at 10 a.m.
Okay.
So that means that Robert Wagner's interview was completed in less than 6 minutes.
Yeah.
The time for him to be interviewed, get worked up, terminate the interview, and then get in place to start Christoper Walken's interview.
I can't believe they just didn't interrogate him longer than that. The key person in all this.
Then Christopher Walken's account is also enough to raise even more questions, you would have thought. Christopher says that he had, quotation marks, small beef with Robert after they got back from the restaurant. No one questioned him further on this. What was the small beef about? How did it manifest itself? Nothing.
Jesus, Robert's influence was strong, huh?
He left the room for a bit and came back to find a disturbed Natalie. No one asked what he meant by disturbed, like physically, mentally, clothes, like what? She went to the room and they assumed she went to bed. Again, thought Christopher went to bed before her, blah, blah, blah. Like it's just inconsistencies. And I don't know if Lana knew this before reading the police report, but Christoper Walken actually went to identify the body, not Robert Wagner, her husband. Lana found this weird. I actually don't know.
I feel for Christoper Walken having to do that, but yeah, it's not weird just because you think if somebody's traumatized, you kind of want to spare them some more of that.
I don't think it's weird that Christoper Walken volunteered to do it. I don't think it's that strange that Robert Wagner wouldn't want to see Natalie in that state. I don't really know. Mm-hmm. I think that I would probably want to go and see and say goodbye. I don't know. I don't know. And this isn't also the funeral or anything. This is identifying a body to carry on with
that's different than in a funeral parlor when they're
so this is the thing that raises for me the least amount of questions, to be honest.
Mm-hmm.
It's not a dicky move in the way that not at any point during this telling the family. You know what I mean? Because I'm sure even if he was under suspicion at this point, which it clearly sounds like he wasn't, they would let him call the mom, or someone would call the mom or the sister to tell them what happened before the media found out. Someone called the press. Couldn't that person call the fucking mom?
Yeah.
Lana also learned that on the night before her death, Natalie actually stayed last minute at the Pavilion Lodge Hotel on the island. Remember, I told you this. This is part of the reason why this theory that maybe Natalie went on the boat herself to go ashore or to go to another boat, because she had done it the night before. But she booked 2 rooms at the hotel, one for her and one for Dennis, who accompanied her, because, as we said, she didn't know how to use the dinghy on her own, and she didn't want to go on it on her own anyways. It's also reported that one of the rooms was unused. Dennis confessed that they actually shared a room, but Lana doesn't believe anything happened. Natalie just didn't want to be alone.
Okay.
Who knows? But the most important part of this story is that this gave Natalie the reputation of leaving the boat in the night, which I'm sure gave more credence to Robert's theories that maybe she went off boat hopping, whatever. When Dennis was asked about this in the investigation, his response was that he wanted to speak to Robert and maybe his lawyer before answering questions. It's like, why is it something that needs consultation? Like, why are the facts controversial, you know?
Yeah.
So the reason why Dennis comes out with all of this decades after the death of Natalie Wood is that he got involved with someone. I don't know whether it was as friends or romantically, and I really feel bad that I didn't write this down, but he got involved with a journalist who he confided with, and he was being eaten up by guilt with all of this. And I'm sure seeing how Lana got treated by the press, by the family, contributed to his guilt. And this friend convinced him to come forth and go public. He actually ended up writing a book with this friend called Goodbye Natalie, Goodbye Splendor. Interestingly, though, a man called Vincent DeLuca, a Washington, D.C. patent attorney, and Natalie Wood fan, read this book, and as a result, started an online petition calling on the LA County Sheriff's Department to reopen Natalie's case because of too many inconsistencies. For example, one moment, Noguchi, remember our coroner to the stars, says that Natalie's bruises are from hours of struggling to get back in the dinghy, and the next minute he says it was a quick death and she was weighted down by the down jacket that she had been wearing at the time. But which one is it, right? The petition was launched in 2011. So just a little contextual, a little bit of context. 2011 was before the time of lots of online petitions. Now they're quite common. So at the time, it got 700 plus signatures. I feel like if it was done today, it would have been in the hundreds of thousands.
Yeah.
But that's what I mean. It's kind of pre everyone being on social media, everyone being on their phones all the time, everyone being online all the time. So something like an online petition would be smaller scale. So at the time, that was considered a lot, and it was enough to get the LA County Sheriff's Department to reopen the case. So 20th of May, 2012, sort of the year after the online petition, and about 30 years after her death, a supplementary autopsy report was created, changing Natalie's cause of death from accidental drowning to drowning and other undetermined factors.
Oh, God.
So they're no longer saying it's an accident. They're saying she drowned. She did physically drown. That is how she died. But they don't know what caused this. And it was brought up that the original autopsy was also really half-assed. Like, for example, nail clippings were not even collected, which seems like standard.
I just don't know how the guy can get away with giving two different stories, the coroner. Why that wasn't picked up on.
And you would have thought if they're saying, oh, she was trying to climb back in the dinghy, that they would take nail clippings, nail scrapings to prove that, because that would surely answer the question. Did she even try to get in the boat? It's really weird. Also weird was that the men, Christoper Walken, Robert Wagner, and Dennis DeVerne, none of whom were expected for any kind of injuries, which you would have thought would be like, give them a basic check over to see.
Wow. I mean, it's insane.
The list of items taken, such as hair, blood, bite swabs, were listed as no longer in custody at this point. Lana's retired police officer friend, the one that helped her look over the police report, said that this was really weird because all of these items are really small. But because Noguchi declared it as an accident, the coroner's office is only obliged to keep these items for 3 years. If her death had been marked as undetermined, which it finally was, or a homicide, they would be obliged to keep these items indefinitely in case the case was reopened.
Yeah.
Yeah. So the fact that he decided, it was 100% an accident, fucked up this future reopening of the case. But he still maintains, even though they were only obliged to keep the stuff for 3 years, that it was very strange that they disposed of it anyways after that time, because they were small items and quite often they're just kind of kept. In the supplementary autopsy, I want to say this right, because I think this person's a legend, Dr. Lakshmanan Satyavagiswaran wrote that the bruises could have occurred before she entered the water.
Well, that's part of the captain's story, that he heard the tussle.
Yeah. The retired cop, friend of Lana, also picked up on something that for me seems like it might be the key to the whole case. Natalie's bladder contained 300 cc's of urine. Apparently that's a lot. I don't know how much cc's of urine we're meant to have, but apparently that was a lot for a petite lady. Something called cold water shock means that if she had fallen in the cold water when she was conscious, she would have relieved herself with that much urine in her bladder. But also, if she was in the water conscious for ages, struggling to get back in the dinghy, I mean, you would just pee if you needed to pee at that point, right?
Mm-hmm.
But, so she definitely died from drowning, but potentially she could have been unconscious when she went into the water, which would explain why her bladder remained full until the time of death. And it would explain how she managed, how is a lot of evidence that she was in the water for several hours before actually dying. But it means that she was unconscious before she fell in the water, which, 1 minute she's on the deck with Robert.
Didn't they? So that means surely that you were in there for a while, long enough to get hypothermia.
Yeah. And maybe she fell in the water. Maybe she maybe she was unconscious when she fell in. Maybe she became conscious again later on. I don't know, but this is the problem. There's too many unanswered questions. But now we've got the possibility that she could have been bruised before she fell in the water, and that she could be unconscious before she fell in the water. And that we know that minutes before she went missing, or let's be honest, fell in the water, she was on the back deck with Robert, and the captain says he saw them arguing on the back deck. They were already having a physical altercation and verbal altercation. And then moments later, he was concerned enough to go to the back deck to check on them. But by the time he gets there, Natalie is gone. So they're now reopening the case. Robert makes a statement that he will cooperate with the investigation. He obviously makes this statement to the press. But in reality, he refuses to speak to the police. Christoper Walken is not considered a suspect at all. So I want to still love Christoper Walken, but I feel like at the very least,
he turned a blind eye.
He turned a blind eye. I don't know how much he saw or heard. Again, we will possibly never know. I don't know how much he heard or saw. I don't know how much he suspected Natalie of being potentially in physical danger. I don't know what he saw and therefore what he covered up to the police. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I think he could have been definitely more forthcoming.
Well, Dennis DeVerne clearly was bought off by Robert to remain silent and
he went and lived with him
rock
afterwards.
the boat. Yeah, not rock the boat.
Yeah.
But again, if these stories of Walken being seasick, going to bed, you know, they'd been drinking, maybe went into a deep sleep, it's possible he didn't see all that much. But I don't know. And again, he did say to the police, I had beef with Robert. And they're the ones that didn't ask further questions. So, you know, it's not up to the witnesses to decide what is relevant in an investigation. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Anyways.
God, it's crazy. There's so many holes. And that's another theme we keep seeing is that, like, if people had taken action sooner, people could have been saved, you know?
Yeah. Okay, so now we're in February 2018. The case has been reopened in 2012. And there's a press conference where police actually name Robert as a person of interest.
Wow. Okay. Which doesn't mean suspect.
No. And specifically, it's not a murder investigation. And therefore, there's no
person of interest. Doesn't that mean somebody who has potential key information?
Potential key information or potentially a suspect.
Okay.
But because this was ruled basically a suspicious death, you know, because it's now drowning and other undetermined factors.
Yeah.
But it's not a homicide. So you can't really have a suspect for murder if it's not been deemed a homicide.
Yeah.
But you can have a person of interest who may have more information about what those undetermined factors are. So this is the closest
bastard, this Robert.
It's the closest thing to being named as a suspect in this case. Because officials are now stating that they really think it's possible she was assaulted before she drowned. And apparently there are 2 further anonymous witnesses. Which...
Hey, who?
Anonymous, and we don't know.
Well, on another boat? Where were they?
I'm thinking on another boat because, again, if you see the kind of, you know, busy moorings, the boats are really not that far apart. Yeah, and true. It's quiet, you know. So, and they also have a witness that was a previous neighbor who had witnessed violent behavior between Natalie and Robert, with Natalie one day coming to the neighbor's door screaming, "Help me, he's going to kill me."
Oh, my God.
Super composed Natalie Wood, who would never leave the house without a hair out of place, you know? But I can't find anything further about this reopening of the case unless there's some kind of confession. I think it's really unlikely we're going to ever know what really happened that night.
Oh my God.
Or maybe
it's crazy. How many people? Sorry.
Yeah.
What were we going to say?
Potentially Robert Wagner is 92. Maybe when he dies, if people will be encouraged at that point to come forward with more information, I don't know. But he clearly had,
he knows what happened.
We don't know the full story, but we do know that he was definitely the puppet master in what happened that weekend and thereafter. But it's just heartbreaking.
Even the fact that she said before, he's going to kill me. You know what? Isn't there a statistic about if your partner assaults you once or strangles, I can't remember if it was specific strangulation or if it was assault, then the chance of them actually killing you at some point is very high. I remember reading that if they try it once, the likelihood of them following through is like fucking high.
Well, it makes sense because a lot of violent behaviors and patterns and so forth, they escalate, don't they? These people are like pushing their boundaries.
I just can't believe this guy got away with it. And I know we have no proof, but there's so much fucking evidence, huh?
I mean, at the very least, he is just a manipulative asshole. At the worst, he's potentially a murderer. Yeah. So where are they now? Lana Wood has had some real sadness in her life. I mean, she lost her sister 40 years ago. Her daughter, Evan, turned to drugs. And died of cardiac arrest at 42 years old, leaving Lana to raise her 3 kids with Evan's husband. The concluding thoughts in her book is that on the night of her death, Lana thinks that Natalie and Robert fought. Well, we know they fought. We know now. Even Robert admits that they fought that night. But Lana believes that Robert struck her, and to hide what he did, he threw her overboard. Or potentially, if you want to give him a tiny bit more benefit of the doubt, maybe he struck her and she fell in the water. I don't know. In 2019, Natasha, who was Natalie's first daughter with her first daughter with her second husband, the husband that wasn't Robert Wagner, made a documentary called Natalie Wood, What Remains Behind. This documentary shows Lana Wood as the crazy aunt. It's not a surprise because she was just a kid when her mom died. And she was a baby when Robert came into her life as her father figure. What's weird is that in this documentary, Robert is still going for that theory that Natalie went to secure the dinghy and fell in. But again, even he would know that to secure the dinghy, the lines are not anywhere near where you would fall into the water.
Yeah.
And that Natalie never would do this herself. She would always get Robert or Dennis to do it for her. So it's very weird that of all the theories, he's going with that one.
Yeah.
Maybe he just thinks it's the most believable because no one's going to believe, even though it was thrown around a bit, that Natalie's going to go boat hopping or back to the island in her nightgown.
Yeah. Oh God. I mean, to me, with all this, and I know the story is fresh to me, but it's one of those two. Either he struck her and then threw her in the water, or they fought and she accidentally fell, or he pushed her, whatever. But
I will actually, not that I'm defending Robert, I would actually be more inclined to believe that he hit her or pushed her, and if it is true that she was unconscious, he must have hit her or hit her with something and she fell into the water by accident, than him hitting her and then wanting to hide the fact that he hit her and throwing her in the water. Because I don't think that Robert Wagner would worry about Natalie telling anyone that he hit her, because it seems like he'd done it before, like I don't feel like that's reason enough for him to basically murder her.
The other thing is that, like, just the fact that, I mean, to be honest, it's almost evidence enough that he told the captain not to Dennis, like, to wait, how's this going to look, don't call them yet, And
I feel like then him telling Lana after the death, it was an accident, I feel like if he'd hit her and she'd fallen in the water, someone like him would totally justify that was an accident. You know what I mean? That he's blameless. Oh, I'm guilty of, like, hitting her, but I'm nowhere near guilty of her death because it was an accident, she fell in the water. Do you know what I mean? I could see him justifying that to himself.
Oh my God, this story. God,
right?
It's crazy how many people get away with murder.
Yeah. Robert Wagner is now 92 years old. I mean, his career may have suffered compared to what it might have been without this controversy, but I had a look at his IMDb and he has never stopped working. And he is most recently regularly on NCIS, which is another show that I'm going to have to just stop watching, even though I quite like it.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a fucking story, isn't it?
Oh, well, it's not boring and it's frustrating, and it's sad. It's sad and frustrating, and it's fucking insane how certain people just get away with stuff,
Yeah.
And it frustrates me when investigations are poorly done,
2 weeks. 2 weeks, and they still had questions. It's not like, oh, by some miracle they managed to find exactly what happened in 2 weeks. Well done. God, they wrapped up the investigation, even though they still did not know. And I mainly blame that Thomas Noguchi guy, coroner. Because if he said, look, there's still a bunch of unanswered questions.
There's a lot of people with blame. Starting with the mother. Starting with Robert. Starting with Dennis for being bought. Robert for
Kirk Douglas.
Oh, well, Kirk Douglas.
For allegedly raping her.
Yeah. Robert for being a general monster. The coroner. There's a lot of guilty parties.
I mean, the theme of this podcast is basically victims and the people that failed them throughout their lives.
Yeah. Exactly. That is a common theme in our research, our podcast episodes. Wow. Yeah. Wow. Fucking hell. I want to go and watch some Natalie Wood movies.
I think I'm going to as well. Justice for Natalie. I mean, and justice for Lana, because...
Yeah, she did a good job.
Honestly, reading that book, I'm sure, I was born in 83 and you're younger than me. So this happened all before we were born. Her death anyways. So I remember bits coming into the media at different times, whatever, and like anniversaries and stuff. but we weren't around and following this case when it first came out. And I am sure that there are lots of occasions where Lana probably appeared like the crazy sister, crazy aunt, in that she was probably like an emotional wreck, probably came across uncomposed and whatever. But that is exactly how I would be.
Exactly.
If my sister died in suspicious circumstances, I would look like a raving lunatic, I'm sure.
I hate it when they use the term crazy for women, because it usually means that they're usually not crazy. They're usually not. It's a very easy thing to say about a woman to discredit her.
Yeah. Hysterical, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, my heart goes out to her. Reading the whole book, and I want to read her other book. She wrote another one, which was more of an autobiography of Natalie Wood, but the second one, the one that I read, was a focus on her death. Fucking hell, I feel for her, because to lose a loved one, especially a sister that you're close to like that, and then get no answers, and the more answers you get bring up even more questions. I honestly don't know how she survived, and it clearly sucked up a whole bunch of her life. I'm not going to say it's the reason her daughter turned to drugs, obviously not, but like what a shame that girl had to grow up in this environment with her mom being so troubled by the death of her aunt, and all in the public eye. Like, that's not fucking easy.
Yeah, there's always a lot of victims, more than just the one, isn't there?
Exactly. And I actually, because this is Lana's book, and she unfortunately was cut off by Robert from her nieces, the children of Natalie. One with Robert and one without. There wasn't much in the book about the children of Natalie Wood, but I just feel for them, because their life, I mean, they clearly wholeheartedly support their father and their stepfather.
Ooh. Do they?
Because one of them made that documentary. But
the other thing also, to be honest, is that's their surviving parent. So
yeah, so that's it. And even if they wholeheartedly believe it, having to deal with all the press and your aunt saying your father did it. I mean, it's just such a shit environment to have to grow up.
How old are her kids now?
Oh, I don't know. They must be our age.
Bit older. She died in 81, so they must be in their in the 40s. Oh God, yeah. Poor them.
Natasha Gregson. 52. The oldest one is 52. The one that made the documentary about Natalie Wood, featuring Robert Wagner, who is not her biological father, but was her stepdad from when she was very, very little. So basically her dad.
God, such a sad story. Well, you didn't disappoint in your storytelling.
Sorry, it was such an awful story, but that's kind of the topic we chose.
I'm going to be thinking about Natalie Wood at 3 a.m.
If you want to listen to a fucking fantastic podcast, actually, I'm going to recommend a few podcasts without being able to remember clearly if they covered Natalie Wood. No, that's not true. I do know that this podcast covered Natalie Wood, because it's one of the first episodes I listened to of this podcast that made me love this podcast, and that podcast is True Crime and Cocktails.
Okay.
With a lady called Christy Oxborough and her cousin, who she's very close with, so they have a lovely relationship. Laura Nash, who, if you've ever watched Superstore, is Dina in Superstore, who's my favorite character in Superstore, because she's basically the kind of, oh, well, no, she's not bitchy, because she's got a heart of gold, but the weird one who can be quite stern, let's say.
I listened to one of their episodes.
I love them. So shout out to True Crime and Cocktails. They have one of their seasons is Famous Fatalities, where they cover, I think they did Brittany Murphy as well, Anna Nicole Smith. They've done a bunch of people. And it's weird how often, we came up in our last episode, it's weird how often Howard Stern comes up in their Famous Fatalities episodes, because he always has something to say, and it's normally totally inappropriate. Yeah.
Well, do you know what? Keep going.
Also, just wanted to shout out to Wine and Crime.
They're
one of my favorite podcasts, and I'm pretty sure they've done a Lana Natalie Wood episode, but either way, I want to shout them out because I fucking love them. So love you guys. Yeah.
You know, which is my favorite true crime podcast, and it comes as no surprise.
Bailey Sarian.
Bailey Sarian. I have yet, and I have yet to find one that surpasses Bailey. And I say that because, like, you know what? I like Crime Junkies.
Love
Crime Junkie or Crime Junkies?
Crime Junkie. But you know what? Go on.
Because I tell you what, Ashley, she tells a story well. She tells a story well. She gives you all the facts. She's a good storyteller. I like that. And I'll be honest with you, I want to get straight into the story. Like, I can cope with about 3 minutes of chit chat. And if we haven't started the story yet, I'm out. I'm done. I've moved on. Like, I really need to be invested in those people.
Do you not just skip a bit? Do you literally, I turned off by this whole podcast? Or
That's how funny they are. They really, those first few moments. I mean, I have a short attention span. You know that.
You do. You always have done. I mean, watching a film with you is a nightmare because you're asking me every 15 seconds what's going on because you're not paying attention and you're just relying on
My phone is out within before the opening credits.
You know what I'll say to you? Because I think Bailey is your gateway podcast in the way
that... you know why I love her? Because she's fucking funny. And that's what a lot of that, honestly, this, for me, my friendships are based on humor. Someone's got to have a sense of humor, but also my podcasts that I need. I'm
going to cut all of this out, Reg, because imagine people are like, oh, why aren't you funny then? Let's not emphasize the humor.
Okay.
Let me say, I think that your gateway podcast, the podcast that got you into podcasts, and specifically if you are a true crime follower, for want of a better word, the podcast that gets you into true crime podcasts, I think will always has that special place in your heart that no other podcast can ever take away.
But you know what? She has the perfect balance. She somehow manages to be funny and sensitive at the same time.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
A skill.
It is a skill.
That's why I absolutely adore My Favorite Murder, classic one. I follow it less and less as I find more and more other podcasts that I find amazing. But My Favorite Murder was the one that got me into true crime podcasts. Well, I had listened to Serial before, but literally that was just a one-off. I thought it was amazing. It is amazing. Go back and listen to it, especially now that there's developments in the case. But I find those early days of My Favorite Murder were something special. And again, being able to be funny and entertaining.
Wait. We forgot our favorite Irish girls. Everybody's favorite Irish girls.
But you know what I love about them? I feel like I've learned so much about Irish culture from their podcast, because obviously there's always the context given to all the different cases, but learning what it's like to be like a woman growing up in Ireland at different times, you know, I feel like I've got so much insight into that culture just from them, as well as hearing about a bunch of cases that are not as well known. They don't always only cover Irish cases, or do they? Yeah, they pretty much do. I think they've covered some that are Irish related. Yeah. But to hear these cases that don't normally get covered is also phenomenal. And again, they're fucking hilarious.
They are funny. They are. So yeah, they're my favorites are Crime Junkie for the great storytelling and just all the facts you want to know. Yeah. Bailey Sarian, because she's just, I really appreciate her delivery, but also the fact that she just, and the Irish girls, that they managed to bring humor in, but still be sensitive with it. Yeah. That's a very tough fucking balance,
We'll put all the links in the show notes so you can go and check them out, but we love podcasts.
Sorry, I had to cough.
I know. All right. Well, thank you so much for listening to that harrowing case. I'm kind of glad, but also sad that I managed to convince you that the Natalie Wood story is in fact not boring. Unfortunately for her, quite a lot happened and most of it bad.
I'm wondering what I'm going to do next week, because I've researched my episodes and I'm wondering whether we want a little bit of light relief, do we want a little bit of spooky, or do we want full blown the worst fucking one of the whole season? It's a good question, huh? What do you think?
You saying the worst one of the whole season, I see as a challenge.
Oh God. I mean, I don't know how it can get. Well, do you know what? There's one that I just couldn't proceed with because it involves sewing dead bodies' eyes open.
Oh, Can you tell us who it is if you're not covering it?
Israel Keys.
Oh, Israel Keys. Yeah, no.
I can't. Yeah.
That one is an awful one. And
I'm not going to have... Yeah.
He pops up in so many different cases as well, because he's been suspected of so many other ones that he's not been formally attributed to. And sorry, I've just got goosebumps.
I couldn't proceed with that one. Yeah, so I don't know which one I'm going to go with next. What do you think?
I don't know. Now's the time we would do, if we weren't pre-recording so much in advance, we do a little poll, but see what you feel like. See what you feel like on the day.
Okay.
Yeah. All right. Love you all so much. Thank you so much.
Thanks for staying with us. Hit us up on the socials.
Sleep well.
Oh yeah. Mwah.
Bye.
Hey there. Thanks for being a loyal listener.
Do you need a new website or want to boost your social media performance? Or do you hate podcast editing? You've tried optimizing your website and social media channels, but you're still not getting the listeners, downloads, and engagement you want?
We, the Savile sisters, love helping people with tasks that they hate. We know a thing or two about podcasts, websites, and social media, and we love working with other podcasters and business owners.
So why not head over to switchbladesisterssocialclub.com and go to our Work With Us section. We believe in collaboration over competition. A rising tide raises all ships.
Bye!